1, 2, 3, 4.
In this podcast, you will be here. Knights of Vader, Knights of Vader includes, but is not limited to, talk of Star Wars, not ray guns. We can't truly prepare you for the jump that follows this song, but hey, we gave it a try. So here's the Knights of Vader. Crystal Fox reports they are divided. Prequel, sequel, canon, love they fight. I know that we are just musicians tired, and their time is up. So here's the Knights of Vader.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Thank you to An Inspiriority Complex for providing our theme song. It is August 14th, 2022, the eve of Ben Affleck's birthday. It is me, Zach Weber, joined by the Porteous with the Mortius, in person, Chris.
It is so wild to be finally doing this in person. I've probably sat in on a few dozen of these at this point, and I was at a collector's event in Zack's neighborhood, and I met up with him last time I was here, and it's been 3 years, and they had the same event again. So it's awesome to hang out in person a little bit.
The second annual 3 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. There was an unfortunate name choice, I guess. Yeah.
Kind of beautiful in retrospect.
Yeah. So basically, over the last 48 hours, Zack was exposed to some extreme nerdery via the Empire State Star Wars Collectors Club, which is really sort of focused on the vintage Star Wars collecting side of things. And they get pretty extravagant with their events. And Zack's had a front row seat to that for a little while. So they had panels, and they had a buy sell trade session. So I'm just, we haven't had too much of a chance to talk about his experience of taking that all in so far. So I'm very curious to hear his take on that.
There was also mozzarella sticks. We can't forget the mozzarella sticks.
Right.
Come on, Chris. You can't leave out the hors d'oeuvre hour. That was on the actual itinerary.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to space out your panels about food premiums and foreign licensees for figures and whatnot.
Exactly. You can't get everybody too hot and bothered. You got that fried food to kind of soak up the excitement.
Exactly.
Oh dear, but yes, no. Chris was obviously in 2019 came out here, and this was the impetus for that. And so a few months ago, he said, "Hey, it's happening again. It'd be a shame if you kind of let this fly under the radar again. I think there'll be some stuff for you to glean from this." And so made sure to block some days off in my calendar. And it's been, I want to say, it's been a rewarding experience. It's definitely the best way to characterize it is if you're listening to this podcast, you're clearly probably the most Star Warsy person in your social circle. And at some point you've geeked out, nerded out, went off on some sort of tangent related to Star Wars nonsense. And the person you're kind of talking to who is very much not that individual just gives you that blank stare. Probably for the second or third time in my life, I've experienced that. Whereas probably the easiest way to just phrase this last couple of days is in the weeds, just in the, and I don't mean that as a negative. I mean, just out of my depth when it comes to a very particular aspect of Star Wars collecting, and that just things that I never thought about, people poured insane amount of time and research energy into it, and it's rewarding because it's learning stuff that no one will ever focus on it that specifically in a book. Maybe in an online article, but it'd be something that would probably be relegated to a third of a page. So to actually have people sit there in real life, devote 30 minutes with examples, pictures, text, explaining it in detail. No, it's something that you can't pass up as a Star Wars nerd because there's a good chance you'll never get to hear it again.
Yeah, I'm glad you sort of phrase it that way. Knowing these guys, I always sort of feel like I'm in the position of there's 15, 20 people who know more about this stuff than me in the room. And that retains my engagement with this stuff because it somehow elevates it to slightly above the degenerate pastime that you might consider Star Wars collecting to be. It's look, there's functional people who do very interesting things, and they've poured so much more time into thinking about these niche aspects of it. There was a few panels, one was just every like mail away product.
Pre 1999. Just pre 1999. Nothing like that's the thing that makes it so fascinating is that it's stuff from a bygone era that during which nobody really saved. So the record keeping is nowhere near as extensive as it would be in the internet age. So it requires genuine research.
There's literally photos of like candy wrappers from 79 that are like a mail away for some Star Wars promotion. It's like, how does that even still exist?
So many cheese lids. Oh,
Yeah.
so many cheese lids.
Yeah. Although it was sort of like more vintage focused, and despite my efforts of trying to make that stuff seem cool to Zack, like he's resisted it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
he's
There's a hard rejection because even Chris yesterday, Saturday, Chris is like, oh, the first part of this is that we're going to like a toy shop, like that's about 30 minutes east of you. And he's like, but kind of like sit on your wallet because I don't want you to blow your wad too early when it comes to money. And so I'm like, okay, Chris. And so like we go to this place and it's called the Imperial Castle
Yeah.
in Pawling, New York, which I'd never heard of. Like I said, about 20, 30 minutes from me, never heard of it. Walked in there and kind of already on cloud nine, just looking at some of the stuff. Oh God, like I don't want to say life size, but kind of like a 5 by 8 foot tall Lego TIE fighter display, like a bunch of stuff like that you don't normally see. And so as soon as we walk in, the proprietor's like, oh, come to the basement. And like, I'm kind of having sensory overload just walking throughout this shop, just getting to the basement. And it's like, oh, look at this. There's this, that, and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, come to the basement. And I'm like, okay, what's going on in the basement? I'm like, okay. And so we go down there and it was a treasure trove for me. Like it was almost exclusively stuff from what I would consider my favorite era of Star Wars collecting, 1999 to contemporary. And I just lost it. Like, it was just like I really didn't know where to begin to. I know at one point that like, it was just Chris and I, when we first started, there was easily a dozen people down there. And by the end, it was just Chris and I. And Chris was like, yeah, we probably should go upstairs. It's like an hour later. Cause I was just like, we were just finding so many things that like you take for granted. Like, what was our favorite item? The 12-inch like doll of Sebastian Shaw, and we were just like having so much fun just staring at this thing and laughing at it.
It was, yeah, I don't know what, it's like some Hasbro like 12-inch Sebastian Shaw, and it was like the ultimate collector's series or whatever. There was one in a box and one loose, just sitting out there smiling at us. And like at that point, you would have think the marketing team would know enough to just not make that, because like he's not Anakin like next week basically. It was just it's because that's like 98 maybe.
I don't know. Again, he was still part of Star Wars because what the mail away one was in the same time period of that.
No, the mail away figure is 85.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's different then.
Yeah.
What was I thinking of then? No, maybe the holographic one, like the Force Ghost one. Because that was what? Power of the Force 2? Was
so 98, same as this larger figure.
So that's, okay, that's what I was thinking of then. So that's the thing, is that that's the thing you got to say about Sebastian Shaw. Like, this was a guy that was known as Anakin Skywalker redeemed for how many decades? And Lucasfilm of the last, 25 years has ignored him. I don't think, again, there's a part of that too where like I get it, they want to tie this to Hayden Christensen, but this was somebody that was hired to do a job, and I would love to know what the SAG residuals are for that you're cutting somebody out.
I would think that by 98 they would know that whoever is going to play Anakin in episode 2 and 3, we're not going to really try and tie it to that dude. You know what I mean? I guess like, because he wouldn't have never been old enough by the end of episode 3 for that to make sense.
There's always, again, a lot of Lucas stuff that he was thinking of in 97, 98. I would love to know what his thought process was in that specific time period. We spend too much time now thinking about what Lucas is doing in the food court, whereas we should have been thinking about what he was doing like in 94, 97, because that was, he was clearly making very hard, like very rigid decisions. Again, why is Obi-Wan the age he is in The Phantom Menace? Like there's a lot of things like that. Why is Anakin, think about it, why is Anakin 9 and Padme 14 in The Phantom Menace? She's 14 in The Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Weird
well,
Al.
that's what Weird Al says.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, that's the question. Is that there's so many specific decisions being made, because what, Obi-Wan's 25 by The Phantom Menace, right?
Well, if he's supposed to be 25, Qui-Gon's really like infantilizing him a little bit the way he talks to him and such. So like, I don't know.
getting back to the toy aspect of all this, but like there was literally an entire 2 or 3 just card tables filled with like 99, 2002, 2005 era 12-inch figures.
Like basically every like Hasbro 12-inch figure.
And
like
from like
super battle droids, like a smiling Palpatine. Like
the only thing that was missing was I think the Revenge of the Sith clone trooper. Like that was the only like 12-inch figure that wasn't there. Everything else was there. And it's just, again, somebody who grew up during that time period, it's remarkable. There was an Admiral Akbar with like a turtleneck sweater, and we were again laughing at this, just being like, man, that's beautiful. Like we would never get that today.
With like big glass eyes that looked accurate. Like it was crazy. Like they made a 12-inch Admiral Akbar.
But there's also stuff too. Like there was like I found Phantom Menace, like the stationery set with like the folders and the pencils, and I didn't show Chris the 6-inch ruler yet, but there was all these things that you kind of forget about because just the Phantom Menace in that prequel era was so over merchandised that you remember it, but you have to have it kind of highlighted.
So you're seeing all that stuff, like that's dialed in like right to your preferred era, as you were saying. Like I kind of agree that I think I'm a little more precise on that. I think like the best 3 3/4 stuff was from like 2007 to like 9, basically, where the articulation was getting good, and like Legacy Collection and all that. And there was a lot of that down there.
Not a lot of vehicles though. That was the big thing. Not a lot of vehicles.
Yeah. So let's let everybody know, like, you did end up leaving with a few things. They might have seen it already in the group, but
the big thing, I guess the big takeaway from that was what wasn't purchased, which I think we should have gotten a picture of, and maybe in subsequent weeks I'll go back and get it, was a Darth Maul inflatable chair, which we tried to lowball the guy on, and he like flipped his lid, and then he like looked on eBay, and he apologized. He's like, the market has crashed on this, and like Chris and I are just like we're just trying not to laugh. That being probably the biggest regret of the weekend is not taking that home for just for the pictures alone.
Listen, I believe that, I don't know, it doesn't matter when you go back, chances are you'll be able to find that.
I know, right? No.
Yeah, so you have a better bargaining position when you come back in a month, and it's still there.
It's still there. Be like, hey, you won 40 last time. Like, clearly we can do 30 now. But no, I walked out with I was trying to collect all the Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut cups. I was only able to get the Sebulba, Watto, and Yodas. And I should say, Chris, that since yesterday I washed those out, and there is a very, very potent mothball smell to the toppers that I have, after washing them out 3 times today, I still can't get rid of. So they might have to take a Lysol bath just simply to kind of get that odor out of them, because like they were sitting in a basement for how long, and I really don't want to be drinking anything through those until I figure that part out. But no, those were the most fun. After that, probably my next favorite item was there was a Force Awakens. Everybody in the shop was arguing as to what it came from. That will be something I'll do more research on in the next couple of weeks, just trying to figure out exactly what store's display that was part of. If I had to guess, probably Toys R Us? Just because Toys R Us was probably the most over the top in probably promoting toys for The Force Awakens.
Toys R Us had a lot of big, crazy stuff at the Force Awakens launch in my area, but I don't remember that piece specifically. It could have come off a larger display. It's
a marquee. There's no Jeffrey. There's no like Target bullseye dog. Like it's legit just the logo with the star background. And that was, like I said, as everybody knows, The Force Awakens being my least favorite Star Wars film, like no questions asked. It's a cool piece. And like many Star Wars nerds, I've realized like delving into promotional stuff is kind of we have to preserve that because eventually it'll be thrown out.
It's pretty much where it's at. I mean, like even with like you saw, my buddy Mike from Toronto came with us, and even with the older vintage stuff, like the real showstoppers are like these crazy store displays that it's just remarkable they're even still intact. Like they started the buy and sell part of the night, and my buddy Mike within seconds,
the first couple minutes, it was like he couldn't run back to our table fast enough for this thing.
It's like a 2-foot tall store display from Burger King in 1980 when they had like glasses for The Empire Strikes Back, and it would rotate 1 out of 4 per week, and they would slot in the featured one, and you'd have the rest of the 4 at the bottom. And it's just like somebody's kept this in reasonable shape for 40 years. They may have not even unfolded it to a flat state in that time. It doesn't really look like they had.
Especially for fast food stuff, because that stuff it's meant to last a month, no more, no less.
Yeah.
So no, that was the big thing, was The Force Awakens. I did pick up 2 Hallmark ornaments that Chris was not particularly enthused about.
I don't even think I don't think the shop owner was enthused either. It didn't seem like he even added to the bill for those.
Yeah. Like, it was cool. Like, one of them was I've had my eye on it now for a couple of years. It was the Death Trooper. And the other one was Admiral Akbar. And like Akbar, like, how can you go wrong with having a squid man on your Christmas tree come December? Like, that seems like a slam dunk right there.
Yeah.
But no, that was, like I said, that place, like, I'd never heard of it, and I was genuinely blown away. And there was a lot of cool stuff there too that wasn't even Star Wars related. Like, Chris found the bugs from Starship Troopers, like, mint in box, and it's like, oh god, what, a 12 by 12 inch box, and it's just beautiful. And we're just kind of like gawking at it.
Like, obviously, I like all that Star Wars stuff, but like, real estate's a problem, you know. Like no doubt there was 20, 30 3 3/4 figures from like 7 or 8 different lines down there, and a lot of it's pretty interesting. The sensory overload makes you just want the Starship Trooper bug. It's just like, you know what? That's easy. That's a manageable thought. It's cool. It's right there, you know. But I think you did well. I wasn't like an order of magnitude off on the price estimate for the Force Awakens store display. Like,
that was random though. That's one where I feel like that's one where if you know somebody in retail, you can probably get that easily, because that's something that can very easily be squirreled away. But what happened later that day kind of offset, because I got what I truly wanted later that night free of charge. So, but we'll get to that in due time, as Chris looks perplexed. But
yeah,
everybody knows the Star Wars film that is my ultimate favorite.
All right, I obviously it's been like a wild couple of days, because I have zero memory of what Zach's talking about, and it was probably less than 24 hours ago.
This is approximately. No, because like I said, not to jump around too much, but in Chris's swap meet for this group, while talking to everybody during the cocktail hour, there was obviously I was wearing the Phantom Menace shirt that I've acquired through an eBay purchase, and it's weird because, like, I will say that the wardrobe attire is kind of all over the place, and that, like, obviously most people are wearing t-shirts though, but most of it's contemporary, except for Chris, who obviously had like a homemade, like a custom made shirt just to show his cred. One guy even had the Ahsoka series TV shirt, and I was just kind of like that has to be officially licensed.
That was a Celebration store.
Yeah, that's
thing.
okay.
Yeah.
So I figured that. But that's the thing though. Like, most of the shirts everybody's wearing is contemporary, and I'm walking around with a shirt that's almost as old as I am. And so people kind of looked at me, and one guy actually said out loud, "Oh, thank God, I'm no longer the youngest person at this thing," which is weird considering that I'm turning 30 later this month. And I was talking to him, and I was just, obviously a big thing being just displays and stuff like that. And we're just going on. And he's like, "Oh, I actually brought 2 Rise of Skywalker displays with me." And I honestly was like, if I wasn't able to kind of give them away later today, I was going to throw them away. And I'm like, what is it from the Rise of Skywalker? Again, beggars can't be choosers. So I'm like, I'll take it if it even has the logo. And he's like, "Oh, it has like the Kylo Ren with like the red super glue, and Rey with like Chewbacca and whoever is behind her." I'm like, perfect. So the joke kind of later that night that Chris can't remember was I spent $100 for the Force Awakens sign, and I got what I probably really wanted for free. So it kind of offset it in that regard, because if that guy at the Imperial Castle had Rise of Skywalker stuff, I kind of would have been like, I don't want to say I would have paid whatever for it, but like, it would have been really hard to turn anything like that down.
You would have probably paid the same price for the one you ended up getting for free later on. Yeah, it's interesting how that works out.
So I was happy.
Yeah. So they had these 4 panels. They were all, subject matter wise, they're kind of all over the place. Like I said, there was one about like the mail away promotions. There was another one that you saw was a guy who like sort of went to Tunisia to recover props from Episode 1 and A New Hope. That one was like, in my opinion, that was like the most interesting one, just because the stuff they were collecting, although it obviously has some value, it's really just, it was like set deck basically, like broken apart pieces of the Mos Espa set from episode 1 and the odd piece from A New Hope, mostly Krayt Dragon bones. But to me, it's just interesting seeing the photos of like a couple guys going down there in 1999 just trying to scavenge stuff. It seemed like, especially with that, like these guys rounded up this shipping container of like all of the stuff that they found, and like it's almost like just knowing this sort of crew of people. Like he probably has a few key pieces on display still, but like I'm sure most of that is sort of just nebulously gone because it's so generic and like it just looks like broken construction materials for the most part. It's more about the story of them going there. I remember like getting an initial reaction from you that was just sort of like when you see the actual materials they recovered, it's like, what
was the point of this?
Yeah. Like
I said, not to be cynical, because I think the story is more potent than the actual, what do you want to call it, pieces recovered. Yeah. Like I said, it'd be one of those things where on one of those like YouTube channels would be like a great video. Like there's a great 30-minute YouTube video that someone could probably sit there and make probably $5,000 off ad revenue from the story.
Even just like editing down his story and using the photos as the only visual.
Yeah, no, like I said, and considering also there's some potent people in the Star Wars collecting realm, like it's nice to actually now, after all these years of talking to Chris, and he kind of like, again, I use this term the most affectionate way possible, and Chris is like, oh man, like I'm gonna hit the bleep button, like the cabal that Chris likes to like make these people out to be for, like, and he has for the last years. If you listen to this podcast, Chris is like, the people I associate with. It's nice to actually put kind of like a face to this now. So like these are people that like Chris always said like had no problem with Galaxy's Edge, did not see it as heresy or blasphemy to the fandom. But no, it's that panel was the most, obviously, because there was an actual story there as opposed to just research. It wasn't just a PowerPoint presentation. And that's one where it's like, again, the story's more interesting than having a piece of the Krayt Dragon. Like if somebody sat there, came to me and say, hey, like, and like dropped it on the table, here is a piece of the Krayt Dragon that was in the desert of Tunisia in 1976. Again, it'd be fun to sit there and say you have a piece of that. But I think that's the extent of it, is to say, oh, I have a piece. It's more of the story than the actual material.
Well, it like, I don't know. It's weird for me because like all the like broken sides of buildings from Mos Espa, like the presenter's name was Chris Georgoulias. He does a lot of writing for the SWCA. You can find his articles and stuff if you search him, if you can figure out how to spell his last name, which is an ongoing joke with those guys. But you know, like from the episode 1 stuff, his favorite piece was like a backpack that an extra walks by in one scene, and you can see it because it was the only thing that he found that was like intact enough that it's like, this is a prop. It's not a broken piece of a wall. But I mean, like, to me, like, I don't know, maybe like maybe I'm crazy. Like I kind of like episode 1, but like another thing he found was just like a broken piece of like the garage dome from the Lars homestead. And like that, even though it was just like a light
that you can point to, though. Yeah, that you can point to, and that's iconic.
That's the best thing that they found in that whole trip, as far as I'm concerned. Like, because you're just like, that's exactly what that is. If you displayed it with a photo of that dome, you'd figure it out in 2 seconds.
Or a door frame. I think the door frame.
Those are pretty good.
The door frame will be really good. Like if you're putting up a little shed somewhere and you want to put your own like door there. Like, I don't know how you could do that properly, but
they're not going to post these panels, unfortunately. But they were not even recorded. But like there was like they were dealing with a guy in Tunisia who was actually building one of these
into the
Mos Espa doors into his house, like, and it was like half under construction. Like while they took a picture of like the frame built around it, it hadn't been filled in yet. It's I don't know. There's something.
There's a charm to
surreal about seeing stuff like that, and it's just like, if you imagine being there, it must have been the weirdest thing.
I don't know, but I also to give my own. The whole time while this panel was happening, I kept thinking of my own instance like this. If you've ever, Chris hasn't heard this story either. If you've ever seen the 2005 film War of the Worlds, starring Tom Cruise, directed by Steven Spielberg, I found out like a month before that movie came out, and it was right after I moved to New York, that was filmed right where my grandmother lived, where I'd spend years coming up for like 2 weeks in the summer. And so we went, and like, if it's actually from the scene in that movie where they get on the ferry and the tripod comes out of the water. And I remember like my grandmother took us to the exact location to like where it was filmed. And I remember even asking like, oh, where's the ferry? And she's like, there is no ferry. It's Athens, New York. There's nothing up here. There's no ferry in Athens, New York. And I remember like you can actually, back in 2005, you can actually find the spot where they had this faux ferry and where Tom Cruise and all of them were getting on it. And I remember taking like a pebble, like a small little pebble, and like actually like creating my own little thing for like, oh, this and that. And I'm like, this, like, and like I said, I appreciate the enthusiasm. Like I said, I think the treasure is not the actual artifacts, quote unquote, recovered from the Tunisia desert. I think the story and the pictures are the treasure. And that's all the time. I'm just like, and I think maybe it goes to like, I don't care about props. Like, would it be fun to sit there and say you have something very specific from the film that was screen used? Yes. But something that's been sitting in a desert that was probably considered trash by the production.
Yeah.
As an individual, as Zack, I'm just like, I would never go to those insane lens.
He added this part into the story, which, of course, I already knew, and Russ would have already known this too.
Real quick, quick sidebar.
Yeah.
During this, what would you think Zenger would think of all this? And we both immediately were like, Zenger would probably be like superficially engaged, but Russ would be losing his mind right now.
Russ would have already known that the crate dragon was not in fact made for Star Wars, and it's like a crappy approximation of a brontosaurus or something made for an earlier film called One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing. And there's something that underscores the absurdity of the mission when like near the plateau of the story, you're like, by the way, this wasn't even made for Star Wars. This thing we're sifting through the desert. We're literally combing the desert like in Spaceballs to find this thing. And it was made for another film and then just discarded. Yeah, really, really interesting. And I mean, this is like a brontosaurus with like ribs and legs and stuff. And of course, in the movie, you just see like the vertebrae and the spine. And they were recovering like the ribs and toes and claws in the desert. So it just makes you wonder, like they brought...
Everything.
I always thought they just shipped the spine because it's like it would be a smaller crate. But no, they shipped the whole thing there and then just either got tired putting it together or thought it looked better just as the spine.
They still threw the extraneous pieces in the sand.
Yeah.
So like there's a logistic aspect to this that like you just, again, begs questions to be asked.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it was reasonable entertainment for like 40 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. Again, like I said, it's a thing of like, if somebody sat there came to me right now, like, would you want a piece of this, like free of charge? I'd be like, no, but I think the story in the pictures are infinitely more interesting. And the whole idea too of like, in what was the context of this? What, March of 1999?
Yeah, it was like after they'd filmed episode 1 down there, but before the movie came out.
Yeah. It's like the idea of scavenging the set for a movie. It's like really betting a lot on something that you don't know if it's going to pay off. And obviously, I feel like it was a very veiled joke, and like, oh, this will all turn out to be the Phantom Menace. So it's like, obviously, it's Mos Espa. But like until the last year, Mos Espa hasn't really meant much to the fandom. And
obviously, there's no Tunisia connection with contemporary Mos Espa.
No, they won't go to Tunisia. Even for The Rise of Skywalker, they wouldn't go to Tunisia because of just how politically volatile that region is now.
Well, also it's the desert planets of the sequel trilogy are
Jordan, right?
Not Tatooines of some nature.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Well, like I said, but even because they shot in Jordan a lot. That was the big thing for the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, it looked a little different though. Like you don't want it to look exactly like Tatooine, but it's not supposed to be Tatooine. That'd be a weird choice.
Oh, Disney. Yeah, because at one point too, because we were talking with Chris, I'm like, does anybody go looking for like any props from like the sequel trilogy? And Chris is like, yeah, a handful of people do, but there's really nothing's left behind because they literally comb everything, so nothing like this slips through the cracks. And 2, it's just the idea there's not as much demand for this sort of thing.
Well, it's just like first of all, Star Wars became huge, and then there's the cultural change of you don't leave behind like barrels of trash after you film it in a place anymore like you used to in the 70s.
I say, goddamn social responsibility. God damn it. Yeah. Depriving us all Star Wars nerds of memorabilia.
Although in Northern California, apparently part of the Endor bunker was left behind, and a guy did build that into a fence on his property, which was recovered from somebody down the road. So, but like Imperial walls were part of this guy's fence. Yeah, weird.
I'm trying to think. When's the last time they blew something up officially in Star Wars that we could go hunting for?
In California, there's also the gravesite of the full-size sail barge, which you can.
Oh, yeah.
There is parts of that out
Still
there.
there.
Yeah, and like
Well,
and
didn't they-
sarlacc teeth. Yeah, yeah. Like literally, you can find sarlacc teeth to this day if you go to the right place. It's crazy.
I was gonna make a joke about them like shooting like what the Mandalorian season 2 in the California desert. Like there's got to be something that's out there from the Mandalorian.
Probably not, honestly. They're like so. There's
Nothing
like,
happened. Like, I'm trying to think because that's what the whole thing with Baby Yoda on the rock and like
and Boba Fett comes down and
there's got to be
cracks him.
something. A pack of cigarettes from
Yeah,
from a crew member.
Tamira Morrison. Yeah, I don't know, but I just don't. I think they're just so serious about not leaving anything behind, not just for environmental reasons, but just because they don't want stuff ending up on eBay and looking like jerks, or like what if a plot point gets leaked?
Of course,
by something being recovered.
We wouldn't want people to know that there's Star Wars happening.
Yeah, because these plots are so riveting and mind blowing that you can't have anyone know them in advance. It's crazy.
Someone finds a script sheet in the California desert that said somehow Palpatine returned.
Like, can you imagine a script sheet that just says, and then Boba Fett cracks 4 stormtroopers in the face? You would have thought it was a practical joke. Like, you wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, you'd just be like, somebody left this here, so I would write about it on the internet, and then they could laugh at me for being such an idiot.
I feel like that could legit happen. It would show up like on 4chan and people would just laugh at somebody. It's like that one guy that like in 2006 like was like, oh yeah, the 8th Star Wars film will be called Last Jedi, and no one could figure out how someone could just take a shot in the dark and be that accurate.
That was actually Seinfeld writer Dave Mandel, who was on camera saying it's going to be called The Last Jedi like 12 years earlier.
That's what I
Weird.
mean. Like I feel like it'd be one of those things where like if they actually did something like that and it turned out to be true, even if it was like done as a gag on like a crew member's part, like it wouldn't be taken seriously. It's the equivalent of like what the Invasion of the Body Snatchers just running down the road, just like yelling like.
But I think his like I don't know, the vibe I got from that comment was like, the title is like Star Wars : We're out of ideas. Like that's what I think that's what he meant by The Last Jedi. But
again, creatively bankrupt, like joke.
Yeah, that's what I think that was the intended tone, but not so with the actual film.
I should say that like because like obviously is Chris being a very prominent member in this, where he's on more or less a first name basis with all the important individuals. I was telling Chris I wanted to pitch an idea for next year's. And I'm like, Chris, like we should definitely do something. And like Chris is just kind of looking at me like obviously like he knows there's gonna be some sort of punchline to this. And I'm like, Chris, like it has to be around my favorite film of all time, The Rise of Skywalker. And already Chris is shaking his head. And I'm like, it should be The Rise of Skywalker : the most unintentionally brilliant Star Wars film of all time. And Chris is like, the word unintentionally alone disqualifies you from you getting anything approved.
Well, I meant that in the terms of like a Star Wars celebration panel. But you might be able to get away with something like that in this environment. But like you'd almost want to script it to the point where like
absolutely.
It better be
Brilliant.
It better have like 20 laughs. Otherwise, like don't waste our time because like, we don't want to actually talk about The Rise of Skywalker. So like,
why the Disney sequel trilogy is the way like and like it boils down to literally like there's like a prop of like a cork board with the like yards of like yarn just going around.
Like the Always Sunny meme, yeah.
Like it literally just boils down to that being like who on earth would trust J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, the co-writer of Justice League in Batman v Superman, to any of this?
Yeah. It's like it has to all sort of boil down to a plot where they wanted to drive it into the direction of Disney Plus series instead of feature films. Like that was the end game, you know. It's I
will say that every single person I talked to at this thing, at some point I brought in my affinity for The Rise of Skywalker. And like I don't want to say that killed the conversation at every point, but it definitely caused everybody to kind of like, you could tell they double take. Like there's kind of like, really? Like you exist. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's not many of me out there, but we do exist.
Well, yet they're like, how did you get in here? Like what's going on? Because you were like a Star Wars fan that like was like, it's weird that like that's how fractured this like quote unquote like fan community is, right? It's like you're a Star Wars fan who has a stupid amount of Star Wars stuff, talks about Star Wars a lot, and you like basically didn't belong in this environment.
I did not like people. I will say that everybody part of this group was extraordinarily friendly. Like everybody was very approachable. You could talk to anybody about anything. Like I cannot overemphasize that enough. And like that was part of like my elevator pitch. It's like I deliberately chose that Phantom Menace shirt because it's like, okay, like again, if you like, there's like I think there was one other guy there with like a Rise of Skywalker t-shirt, but it was something that was plentiful in 2019. So like when I picked that shirt out that day, I was doing it for a very specific purpose, and because it's not something that most people walk around with. And so like people obviously see that and they're like, oh, like I haven't seen one of those. Like at least 2 people are like, oh, I haven't seen one of those in a while. And I'm like, yeah. And obviously you talk about that and they kind of look at you. They're like, so like what? And obviously the second question being, what do you collect? And it's like, I don't really dabble in any of this. And they're like, okay, why are you here then? And it's like, and I always point to Chris in that and be like, I wrote his coattails in.
Well, it's not really that. I mean, I think there was other, like, we went to that shop. That guy's a collector. There's a ton of modern stuff there. When it got to the sort of buy, sell, trade part of the night, there was other people selling modern figures. Apparently there were some like prequel prototype figures. I didn't notice them, but some people were buying them. I didn't see that. But, and you know, one of the panels was literally about scavenging Mos Espa from 1999. And, you know, there was a Rick Olay joke here or there. Like these guys.
There was a C.O. Bibble reference at one point.
Yeah, these guys do episode 1. Like, and
but that's the thing though. It ends at episode 1. We did forget one thing that I purchased from the Imperial Castle. It was a Saga 1 Jango and Boba Fett, like little display, like what, like 5 by 12.
Oh yeah, I guess.
And literally, we like at one point the guy held it up. And he's like, "How much is this going for?" Everyone's like one guy's like $12, and it's like $7. And it's like it went down once everybody realized what it was from.
Yeah.
And like in the whole time during this, just like conversations with people in between panels, I'm just like, "Yep, I'm that guy."
Well, no, but isn't that amazing though? Like, so Zack buys 2 store displays from this shop. A Force Awakens one, which was agreed upon at $100, and then Attack of the Clones one, although it is smaller, you know, it's from an actual film made by George Lucas, not like marketing material, which is The Force Awakens. And like, you know, it's just the lack of interest is palpable from these guys. I don't know. And it even has a Mandalorian on it.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah,
it's something that's actually technically contemporary with all the Book of Boba Fett nonsense floating around.
Yeah.
Even at one point too, like even like they were doing the raffle. We should also mention too all the stuff they raffled off for Rancho Obi-Wan. That was really cool. Like there was a Cad Bane blanket that was like hand woven. I think that was the highest item of the night. I think that went for north of 500.
Yeah, right around 500 for a handmade Cad Bane.
That was beautiful.
Blanket.
Like that's something like even if you had that like commissioned, like someone would easily ask like 800 to 1,000 for.
Yeah.
That was even a steal at that price.
Yeah, I felt the same considering the vinyl posters were going for like 300 and yeah.
And but anyway, though, getting back to the point of all this, of just like kind of finding your place and all this, and this is something that like this is something too that like I would like again next year and just ask more as like a philosophical question at something like this event, is that what is there being done? And I mean this genuinely, to recruit newer fans, as in people, again, Chris is 33. He said, I'm about to turn 30. What is being done to recruit people our age and younger into this? Because at some point, like, all these collections, people are either going to have to donate them or sell them off. And I don't doubt that there's obviously going to be fans in their 40s and 50s that will buy this. But like any sort of collection, it's going to eventually trickle downhill. Again, don't mean that in any sort of derogatory fashion. And it's like, what's being done to entice that new generation? And that's something that I find fascinating. Like, obviously now these group of fans are nostalgic about the Phantom Menace. And the Phantom Menace was a seismic part of being a Star Wars fan, up there with something like, obviously, the 70s and 80s. But like, I don't think there, even though like we're going to ignore Attack of the Clones, but even though Revenge of the Sith is considered widely the objectively best prequel film, I don't think people are nostalgic about that release, as in May 2005. I don't think there's anything nostalgic about May 2005.
It's you would have thought that those guys barely knew those 2 movies came out.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I think the reason for that is, like, first of all, I don't think anything's being done for recruiting younger people to be interested in this. You either are or you aren't. I think it will, maybe 10% of this product, like the vintage original trilogy stuff, will always have an inherent, like, reasonably high market value, just because it's like Amazing Fantasy 15 or like Batman #1. Like some people with means will always want the first 12 Star Wars figures that ever came out. Will they want any from Return of the Jedi? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Like,
but I do think there is a point of, like, we were talking about this about earlier this year in May, there was 2 toy, I don't want to call them conventions in this area. And one of them had the Rebel transport from The Empire Strikes Back, a toy that has never been re-released, very exclusive to 1980, exclusive in more ways than one. And I've always wanted this thing because it's a unique ship design. You only got that limited release. It truly is limited. I think it was released for Return of the Jedi, re-released under the Return of the Jedi banner, right?
It's possible. I don't recall seeing that.
But the point being is that it's something that is locked in the 80s. And we were talking about this, like kind of like I was vaguely recollecting what it looked like, the packaging. And I think a lot of the stuff that, like, of course, like core aspects of vintage collecting will always be there because it's just 78, 80, and then 83. But looking at a collection, we went to a private collection today, and there's a lot of stuff there that, like, it was enlightening to learn about because it was the definition of getting into the weeds. But you are going to have a hard time getting more than a handful of people to even kind of recognize this, never mind want it. Whereas this generation of fans is obviously knows what it is. I do think, again, Chris, I think you and I think it's fair to say we were both Star Wars fans with a capital SWF. But there are fans out there that are going to sit there like you would need a 30-minute presentation to explain what a lot of this. So it's like there's numerous times today, like we were going around these displays and I'd be like, Chris, psst, can you explain this to me, please? Like I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't know what I'm looking at. And that's the thing where it's just, I think it's a combination of it's niche and combined with there's nothing to even bring this stuff to light. I think it's the Indiana Jones thing of, it belongs in a museum and it's not being allowed to breathe, so to speak, and like letting, again, I don't know where to begin because obviously it's a private collection, but at the same time too, I feel like people are, it's not being exposed to the air so people can appreciate it.
Well, I think like people in those circles would tell you it's exposed to the air just because like a lot of these crazy collections are like these days especially, all these guys were involved in a site called the Star Wars Collectors Archive, and it's still going. They still add to it, but this is like early internet site like this core group of collectors made when they were in college, and like as much stuff as he had there's probably an entry that is very easily Googleable for like probably everything in that collection. It's crazy, like down to like detailed notes about like who's collection it's currently in. So it's just so stuff isn't lost, right? Like for example, on that site there's an entry for the original painting that was the source art for the cover of Splinter of the Mind's Eye, for example. And like these guys are so serious about this stuff being not lost that in 90% of the cases it's like, by the way, this is the guy that owns it right now. So like,
I don't mean, okay, well, I guess to rephrase that, it's the idea of like, I didn't know this, like not, again, it's documented,
yeah,
but there's nothing to create enthusiasm for it. And that's the thing where I think this goes back to just Star Wars collecting of action figures being, I don't want to say dying, but just there's that notion of there's nothing happening to get people excited for this. Like I said, a lot of this stuff was interesting, and that's why obviously Chris being a glorified tour guide for most of the weekend was good, because it definitely gave me a new perspective on this, and it's that knowledgeable person that's able to sit there do that. And that's the thing that concerns me, is that it's just that there's so much, again, if you are a Star Wars nerd for merchandise, there's so many stories here that even though they're documented, they're kind of like it's like a book and they're at the last page. And that's it's that notion of there are these stories there. And we look at, like, and think of how many toy stories that we know for Star Wars. Like obviously, like think about the early bird. Like every Star Wars toy collector knows about the early bird. Like, oh, like we did this back in 1977. It was an empty box. Hardy har har. And yet there are so many more, if not just as interesting, more interesting stories out there that, yes, they're documented on like a GeoCities site. I'm joking. I'm joking. I mean, yeah. It's a joke for it's there for embellishment.
Yeah, but it actually predates GeoCities.
Okay, so thank you for making the point worse.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though, and that's where like a lot of this was interesting, and it's just like Like even like looking at some of the Turkish stuff, I'm like, Chris, why does this matter? I'm like, I know what it is as a Star Wars fan, but I'm like, why? I'm like, what is the point of all this? And he's like, it's visually interesting. And I'm like, boom. Like he explained it in 2 words. And that's my thing is like, I feel like there are so many, for the same reason why you can go on like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Lord knows what other social media platform is prevalent by the time this gets uploaded. That would be a great avenue for just not saying that you sit there and take pictures of this, but just like a YouTube video, just being like, what's the history behind this? You have all these people that are so insanely knowledgeable about it and clearly want to espouse it, and not saying that you say, hey, this specific item is at XYZ's address, this city, this state. Just that's the sort of stuff I feel like should be just documenting it in a more prevalent way of doing it other than a URL somewhere.
Well, I don't know. I think that stuff's out there. It's just like there's 2 facets to it, right? Like I geek out on this stuff pretty hard, as you can assume. Like, so literally since Celebration 1, there has been collector track panels like that Gus Lopez has put on. So like whatever it is, 20 celebrations, that guy has been there and run a stage of panels that are like equivalent to the stuff you saw yesterday. Like dry, like when you might say some of it's a little dry, but it's at Celebration, it's a full house for these things. It's crazy.
But I'm gonna give a nice juxtaposition to this. There's a YouTube channel that I absolutely adore. I think it's Yesterworld. And he's done a couple of videos on just like lost movie props. Like again, a lot, like obviously the the ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz, like again, your low hanging fruit. But one of them that was the Death Star from the original film and it becoming a trash can for 10, 15 years outside, what was it, a line dancing bar or something?
I thought it was actually an antique shop, but maybe
it ended up there at one. The point being is that it was about 5 minutes out of like a 15-minute long video. And it's those things where like if you go around like on the street and you tell people like at the office, you're like, hey, like you want to know a story about what happened to the Death Star from the original Star Wars? Like anybody who's not like a nerd's gonna be like, and like
well, because first of all, it's like, what do you mean? Well, it's like, well, I mean the model that was used, the miniature model that was used to film a few shots where you can actually see dynamic 3D movement on the Death Star. And
this is the thing is that like in this video that's 15 minutes, it's one segment amongst many, much like what happened yesterday, juxtaposed with the Crate Dragon bones and the Mos Espa set, is that there's really interesting stories here. I just don't think they're being marketed properly.
So you're saying they should be truncated and have the person who's reading them needs to sound more excited.
No, not at all. No, like I said, the Mos Espa thing yesterday was like numerous times you're on the edge of your seat just listening to this, knowing eventually you knew the ending to it, but it's still interesting. No, I think there's a lot of this stuff, like I said, with the collection we toured today, where there was so much stuff that was kind of there, just like even like at one point we were talking about the card back for 3 3/4 inch figures, and like I feel like for the same reason why there's so many, and this has become a weird joke on Cinemoddities, retrospectives on like Disney theme park stuff, where that's become its own industry on YouTube, where you can legit probably make a 5-figure living off making those videos once a month. I feel there's that same potential here for like vintage Star Wars collecting that could bring new people into this that would sit there, look at all this and be like, wow, like, again, the new generation. And I feel like the potential, the foundation's there. It's just like, again, not even like it. I know because of what the guy at the Imperial Castle, like, is any of this being streamed anywhere? And Chris like very immediately is like, no, like no cameras allowed. But I think there's that thing, like you take these people that clearly have all of this material knowledge of the story and just just do that. Like that'd be a fun thing to sit there, see like in a year span. It's like a goal, just being like, and again, you use it for maybe a fundraising opportunity, and you take any views that are gained from this and you plug it right back into the hobby, the passion that everybody has. And that was probably my big thing. Is like there were so many, even the story about the guy who had the Rocket Fire Boba Fett at the Walden Books, like God, that was what, a 15-minute story, and the whole time this kept unfolding in ways. And the fact that you can even, I guess Chris even told me there's a Pawn Stars segment revolving around that. Like there's so much you can do with this that you could take some level of dramatic license for. And I'm just like, why isn't that, as a nerd who loves these sort of little stories, much like the Death Star trash can. Like there's so much there, and it feels like it's not that it's being kind of sat on, but it feels like it's being kept in the cabal, as Chris put it, where it's like, and again, you still keep it in the cabal, but let the cabal sit there like once a year, come out and tell its tales, then go back.
I think that's how you'd have to do it, because I think the reason you don't see more of that is because they're like the culture of this community is such that someone telling that story who didn't experience it, it's like plagiarism almost, right?
But you get those people involved, though.
Yeah.
That'd be the fun thing. Like, obviously, you go again. That's where there's. The thing is that, like, and this is where I've always even told Rob when we do Cinemoddities, is that, like, Rob, the key to success is not having a great idea. It's just having a YouTube channel that somehow is able to spin this stuff in a way that people really get on board with. And I think there'd be so many great ways to do, like, whether it be animation or something, like reenactments of all this, like, and you have the people tell it who were there for it first person recollecting it. And that's the thing, like I said, it's like there's so many great stories that came out of this that I feel like you wouldn't be able to do it justice reiterating it. And that's why it's like, wouldn't it be great to document this in a way that it brings more people into the, pardon the phrase, but into the club that will also appreciate it and then espouse the appreciation of it.
That's a good take, because like I hope you got the impression like they're really not trying to keep people out, so to speak.
Oh no, that's the thing. Everybody was so friendly and welcoming.
Although you had to know where to look to come to this event. Like they weren't making ads to sell tickets or anything.
Well, that's the thing though. It's like you also don't want a carpetbagging effect, because you want people there that'll respect it. But this is a good way to sit there, do that, and obviously you're not going to go out of your way for this sort of thing unless you really truly appreciate it. Like Chris does not travel, 9 hours each way?
Yeah.
To this if he didn't have some sort of affinity for it. And they made a big point. They had all these people from different locales that clearly had, like, not just me who couldn't just drive 25 minutes.
That was the
southwest
thing. Like that's the funniest thing. Like when this happened in 2019, I was like Zach, it's like it's literally in your backyard. But like we didn't know each other quite as well back then. We hadn't like talked for like hours about Rise of Skywalker at that point. So, but like it's really preposterous like how close this was happening to Zack, and like just certain things like not knowing that the Imperial Castle was a short drive away from him.
I can only imagine how many fantastic things I've let slip through my grasp. How many Phantom Menace inflatable chairs have I missed out on because of this?
Yeah, like that story's been there for 5 years. Yeah, crazy. But yeah. So I don't know. That's a good take, I think, to like sort of like it, get maybe even like you were saying, even if it's like an audio format with like animation or photos, just to like get a real tight version of some of the most compelling stories, and hopefully trick some kids into thinking it's cool. Like get Logan Paul buying vintage Star Wars figures.
No. Oh God, no.
Then,
well, I would imagine that is a fear. I would imagine somebody like that would show up and kind of burn it all to the ground.
But the thing is though, with what a lot of these guys are holding, they probably wouldn't mind if somebody like Logan Paul got into it, because the value of their collections would skyrocket.
Yes. But I feel like that would eventually be seen as a detriment to everything. Because that's someone that's going to sit there like... It reminded me of the thing Red Letter Media did a couple years. They took a bunch of vintage figures and like put them in acid. Like literally got like a large like aquarium tank and literally put them in like a vat, like filled it with like acetone and watched and like filmed it like with a... like over the course of like a weekend just melting. And I know that just like... And that's the killer. Is that you have somebody who just doesn't care and wants to watch the appreciation burn to the ground.
Well, I'm actually fully in favor of what Red Letter Media did in that stunt.
Putting vintage figures in acetone?
Absolutely. Because for one, I could look at that aquarium and tell you this isn't intelligently selected to not be expensive stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. It was crap.
And, well, it's just it's like Hoth Han, no weapons in there, and how
if there was a weapon in there, that would be
he's not burning money per se. Like they're probably, but I mean, they're still probably $5 or $10 a piece. And we look at a 90-gallon aquarium or whatever it was, like like low end, there's a couple $1,000s in there, but. Loose figures, especially even like the vintage ones, like, they made millions and millions and millions of them. And it was, it was a bump in social media interest for the topic. It was worth sacrificing an aquarium of those figures.
Many reads.
I remember talking to like this group of people about that at the time, and I'm just like,
Really?
you guys don't get it, man. Like, this is good. Like, this
They didn't like it though.
Yeah, they didn't like it, but like,
Yeah, it's sacrilege.
yeah, I mean, but I think some of them could put it in perspective that it's like the reason he was doing it is because of how appalled he was by the Disney era films, and like that's a good reason.
Well, shouldn't you have filled it then with like Goss Towers and like Rose Tico? Like, remember the guy who like was sitting there like decapitating Rose Tico action figures at one point?
Well, it's more. I mean, I think it's more symbolic saying that like Star Wars is dead by like burning like the stuff that actually mattered. You know,
like I said,
Yeah.
I don't see any. Somebody obviously is a toy aficionado. I see no reason to like. Maybe it's the Toy Story lover in me. Like to me, that's going down the Sid path. Like
it's to be honest,
that is heresy. If you
to be honest, that isn't that whatever happened to that. If he threw it out or what, he could have auctioned that. He could have totally like put that up in Hakes, and these same guys who are mad about it would have been bidding on it.
Yeah. And that, well, like I said, that was my issue when they did that. Because, like I said, that's also not being done for any reason other than to get people like. You are deliberately stoking a fire when you do things like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of the people who like those figures are not particularly taken with Disney era Star Wars content.
But that's what I mean, though. Like, if you're going to say like that's meant to be like a thing, like, oh, Star Wars is dead. Then, like I said, go. Like, I still don't agree with it. Go get a bunch of Rose Ticos. I mean, not just specifically her, but I just mean get the current peg warming figure and do it that way.
I remember what company it was, but some retailer was offering a bouquet or a dozen of roses around Valentine's Day. I don't know if it was like Entertainment Earth or something. Somebody got away with doing that.
That's
amazing.
Cute, at least.
Yeah,
that's cute. Okay, that's a clever idea of trying to get rid of some figures. Like for the record, it should be said that while Chris and I were talking, I took 4 figures that were sitting on the kitchen table, and I peeked behind the curtain here, and I placed them in front of Chris. And Chris now is just kind of like staring into the void of these, and being like, I wonder if Zack has any acetone in the house. I
kind of like seeing some 501st clones. I kind of feel like Jet Lucas about to be murdered. Like, I don't know. But
I want you to describe. This is a very interesting Vader.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
I threw Chris for a loop with this.
Yeah,
this has been sitting on the table for months now. I figured this was a good time to sit there and put Chris to the. Chris is visually inspecting this.
I don't know. I didn't get this one. It's either the Macquarie or like something even weirder.
It's something weirder than that. I don't even know. I think it's a 2007 figure. It was a comic 2-pack. It might be a Visionaries. It's supposed to be like Anakin, but I think it also comes like a Jedi Leia. I don't know where she is though. She's somewhere floating around.
Well, the amazing thing is that Vader's armor, even though it's got like a neutral Anakin head underneath that's not burned, the armor is actually a unique sculpt, something Hasbro's forgotten how to do. Like, they have a Macquarie Vader coming out that's just the Empire Strikes Back body with a newly sculpted helmet on top.
Chris, just be happy it's not the 2013 Boba Fett mold. But it's a Vader figure. It doesn't matter. It gets the Boba Fett mold.
Yeah.
Every figure is the 2013 Boba Fett mold.
Yeah, you just don't know it when you look at it, but you can just hold it in the light the right way.
It's like the ending of V for Vendetta. Everyone just pulls their costumes off, and that's what it is.
Well, it's like when it's like I don't know if I told you this, but it's like you know how there was that Mandalorian vintage collection ATST with like the pirate paint colors on it, like the Klatooinian Raider in there. You like who's like it looks like a new figure. You look at the foot on the bottom and it says copyright 2011. So like his pants are just from something that came out like before the Disney sale. It's just like like so little of that stuff is actually new. It's crazy.
Real quick, I should say, just to bring it obvious because everything comes back to toys.
Yeah.
One of the other things I purchased during this, I didn't talk about the swap meet itself. I don't think we should talk about the poster incident where we found the 2007 The Clone Wars poster where Ahsoka Tano was veiled, and that we caused like a minor incident.
Yeah.
Like everybody got like we saw that. I saw that. Everyone like immediately wanted to jump on top of it. But one thing I did purchase was to this day I still don't. Well, 24 hours later I still don't know what it's called. But it's like the vintage collection book that has like all the documentation of that. It's something that only came out in the last couple of years, and just it's funny because there's obviously they interviewed Hasbro people for that book, and there's some like obviously somebody who loves Star Wars figures that are outside of your core like original trilogy, prequel trilogy. So I had really a lot of fun going through reading the stuff for like the Bastilla Shan, the oh God, the Republic Trooper, Malgus, just stuff like that. And I love how like in like all the editorializing at the bottom, like, oh, like for every single one, like Hasbro fought it at some capacity. Just being like, people don't want this. This is not gonna make us any money. And then we'll go on and be like, this figure was very difficult to find. They had to repack it later on in a different way because it was so difficult. Like, and it just goes to show that I don't know what their market research is, but for the last 10 years, they've really just assumed everything. And then they make, in the very beginning of the book, they make a very purposeful point of saying like, oh yeah, like Hasbro's constantly looking at polls, forums, engaging with people at conventions and stuff, trying to gauge where the market is because it's always changing. And yet it seems like it's regressed their understanding of all this. Because it seems like when the book first begins with like them talking about stuff like in 2006, they had some idea of where it was, and then it just regressed over time until eventually it just evolved into, yeah, we do what we have to do to get things done.
Yeah, I thought that book was interesting. I didn't get in on the crowdfunding campaign either, but you know, it's like it's a cool place to find stuff like that because there's a guy who just had it for like less than what the crowdfunding campaign was. He's like, I realized I don't read books, so here it is. So that was almost the attitude of like, yeah. I don't like this anymore. Exactly. Here it is.
I will say, like I said, a couple of things I picked up during the swap meet, not during the Imperial Castle. Like I got a Black Series Fennec Shan, like a legit new figure, which would retail for anywhere between, oh God, 22 to probably 27 now, just because of what they've raised costs. I got it for $20. So there's stuff like that where obviously dealing with collectors, they're not going to try to gouge you. They'll tell you, like I sold some stuff, like I had some figures where like some guys like, really, you only want this for this? And I'm like, kind of like put some like good Star Wars collecting karma in the world. Like I'm not trying, I'm just trying, like, it's going to cost you more to move this. So like, all I want is what I paid for it. Really? He's like explaining to me, he's like, actually, these are really good, like remnant troopers. If you think about it, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, like go for it, man. So, and then like, oh God, what was the other thing? Cause the poster. So there was one guy there, Chris probably knows his name. I forget his name. And he had like a stack of posters, and it was beyond just, it was like marketing material more than like actual posters. And we're going through it and had like a sign on that said like $2 each. And I realized there was two. Nobody else did. But what it was is that's a very specific piece of Clone Wars marketing. It was the 2007 Celebration poster where they hadn't even announced Ahsoka Tano yet. It was her veiled, where she looks more like Luminara Unduli than she does Ahsoka. And like Chris is like, oh. Then somebody else came up and like they lost their minds at this, like in a good way. Like they were just like, it was something that clearly was on their wish list for a while. And like, I kind of just bowed out and I'm like, no, you guys. And Chris was like, no, you can buy it if you want. And I was like, yeah, take it. And I'm like, no, like clearly you two guys. Chris was like, Chris, as long as you hang on to this, that's fine. If you ever want to sell it, like call me up because I will. Like, let me put a bid in for it. And I was like, are you sure? And he was just like, oh God, he gave me a hug afterwards. He's like, I've been looking for so long. I didn't want to deprive you of it. I'm like, no, dude, like, if you're happy to find this, like I got to look at it. I'm happy. I never saw this in person before. I got to check that off a proverbial bucket list.
Yeah, like you guys got to understand how weird this was. Like first Zack wanted it, and then I was like, that's pretty cool. I'm guessing it was given out at a panel because there's a lot of those celebration posters that are like 11 by 17. Every time there's a new Disney Plus show, they have one. But like, you know, this guy is like the guy who is freaking out over it is actually an Ahsoka focus collector, which like wrap your head around the fact that that's a real thing. It's like, you know, he has pre-production, like he probably has like 5-6 like prototypes of Ahsoka figures, like various Clone Wars ones and whatever, right? So you know, I'm glad he got one. But I think even like, I didn't look it up, but like I think like $20 even for that poster is probably a steal, to be honest. Yeah, like it's just people. It
was also Star Wars, like in a really weird time. Like it's Star Wars, it's 2007 Star Wars promo content. Yeah, like nobody knew what this show was going to be. Like nobody took it seriously because this is like right after the prequels are concluding. Yeah. I think what was 2007 for Star Wars? Like it was a point where it went into high. Like it's 1985 all over again.
Yeah, and I mean, the dealer had this bucket of this like folded piece of cardboard of like random posters was like some of my favorite stuff there. There was like an expanded universe timeline that started out with like Tales of the Jedi, and like I got a Hasbro poster that it was probably from Comic-Con or something, but it was just like this wide poster of like all of the Revenge of the Sith figures, and it's just like so nicely lit and like well laid out, and like you see that fact that you get like 50 figures at the launch of this new movie, and it's just such a like relic of a bygone era, and like just how nicely it was put together. Like I got one of those. Like I don't even know if the guy wanted me to pay for it. It's just like, it's weird how like checked out of that sort of, like they know that they need to keep this stuff and like bring it to these things, but it's like they can't throw it out. It's crazy.
It's a way of sharing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like I'd rather see somebody have it than it go in the garbage inevitably.
Yeah, and I posted this in the Facebook group a while back, but like I tagged Zenger on a post like, did you know Dirge was on like Chef Boyardee cans for a while, and like there's a guy there who has
the labels,
Dirge Chef Boyardee labels, or you just can't even believe what you're looking at.
I will say, when Chris like brought this up to me, because Chris was flabbergasted about it, I'm like, Chris, I literally like I remember eating that. Like in 2003 and 4, I remember buying those cans, and I remember that because there was a little thing on it where I think you could like mail away for an Attack of the Clones like VHS copy if you had enough proof of purchases. I remember that, man. I remember that, and they had the Yoda ones. It was like Obi-Wan and Dirge, and there was like a Yoda one. I remember that, man. Chef Boyardee was delicious.
The last Star Wars movie to come out on VHS, unless you count like
the Australian Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, there's somewhere Revenge of the Sith. That's not a real place. That's fine.
No.
Yeah. I don't
Down under.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So like, I think this was like, me and Zach could have still got together and did this, and we would have had a fun conversation. But like, I think it benefited from exposing him to some weird stuff in his backyard that he like, because like for all he knew, like I was either like understating the weirdness of this sort of like vintage collecting community, or like it didn't even actually exist.
I did, for the record, like going into this, I not that I didn't know what to expect, but like the toy thing, like it's like, because again, Chris sent me the itinerary like 2 months in advance, and the thing that again it gave me pause, because like there was like, oh, like the first thing is like a scavenger hunt. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, please don't let it be this sort of thing. And it's like, and so like I look at it, it's like, oh, like local like toy like shops, dealerships, whatever. And I'm like, there's none of that around here. I'm like, you need toys, like it's Target and Walmart.
Okay, but you didn't even know about the Imperial Castle.
Okay. But okay, out of all the names on that list, somehow I overlooked that one. But like everything they had listed was like, these are antique shops. Like these are not, again, and they're easily picked over, or as Chris has clearly figured out, like the people in these certain geographic locations have their fingers into these. So like if you ever find anything, it's gonna be sheerly by accident. And so like when I first saw that, I'm like, oh God, I'm like what is this? Is this just like a bunch of people just like finding things to do, like to make it look good because like they're in upstate New York where there's nothing to do? This one coworker once put it like, unless you're into some white people stuff, you're gonna be bored. Yes,
amazing.
But no, like I said, the Imperial Castle was probably the great way to start this off. And then again, the panels kind of slowly put me into this world where it let you know. Like the first panel, I will say, was what was that? That was the knockoff cases.
Yeah.
And that was one where like it was the ice water of like this is a deep cut.
This is action, like 3 3/4 action figure cases from like 78 that were made by like third-party companies who wanted to like capitalize on the popularity of Star Wars. These guys had a panel about like cases that were not officially licensed. That's the type of deep cuts.
And the type of material was used for the trays inside, like the flimsy versus the firm plastic. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, okay, that's what this is going to be. And then, like I said, and again, obviously the two guys, nothing against the two guys that were doing it, but it was the notion of like the topic, like, okay, it's going to be this. Yeah. And then like once you kind of put yourself into that like frame of mind, it made sense and you got more and more engaged with it. And that was the thing where it was like, obviously as somebody who like, was there anybody else that had been doing this for the first time there, or was I the only one?
There was one other guy who like, he like, never showed up to any of these meetups before. Yeah.
Okay, but was he part of the cabal or no? Okay.
Not really. Like, you know, he buy and sell some vintage stuff,
sure.
But like, yeah.
But that's what I mean, though, and that like you have to know going into this. Like I said, like this would be absolutely. I will say that again, of everybody that's ever done this podcast, Ross would have lost his mind. Like Ross, I could just see just eating this up. Like Zenger, like I said, Zenger would be polite, of course, but I don't think this is Zenger's cup of tea. Joe Yazzo probably would, again, is a former KB manager and just knows a lot about retail of like the 90s. Would have really had a lot to appreciate from this. No, like I said, it was engaging. It was engaging because I got nervous. Like I said, when you're spending that much time and you're sitting there talking about like in the certain types of plastic and just the Darth Vader with the skirt and the boobs, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, look at my watch and it's like, oh, this goes on for another 6 hours. And then no, but again, it became, once you got acclimated to it, it became fascinating. Because you talk about all the different like mail-away products. Like I would love, like I said, it would be fun to do a thought exercise for the next 6 months, being like, if I could sit there talk in front of a group like this, I would love to do like, again, like all the promotional stuff, like for the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, just go like the stupid little puzzle pieces for the Attack of the Clones and the Frito-Lay's packages. All these like kind of promotional tie-ins that were in the box that we all kind of take for granted, even going to, I know there's Frosted Flakes for Kenobi. Like stuff like that, where it's just like you looking at the marketing tie-ins, which is a form of merchandise that isn't widely focused on, and it's kind of disappeared. Like, no, there'd be a lot beyond just my morbid curiosity with Disney Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I think this is the kind of like, especially like what you were saying like earlier about like how do you present this stuff in a way that can actually explain to like the uninitiated that it's actually interesting in like less than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And like present it in a compelling way.
Wait.
Like,
under 15 minutes?
Yeah.
15 hours.
Yeah. That's what I'm like. So like, but I think this is the audience that is receptive to that kind of thing. And one thing we haven't really mentioned is like the tickets for this event were like the main day that Zack and I did was like $60 or something. You know, like I've only been involved with this sort of subculture for like a few years, and like I know that to a certain subset of people, it's not that $60 is expensive. It's the idea that some people like psychologically object to the fact that they should have to pay money to like hang out for a few hours. So like it's sort of like a self-limiting factor. But the thing is, like, these guys like pour their heart and soul into this stuff. For a $60 ticket, the one thing is like they made like a statue and a poster that they gave out to everybody at the end of the day. Like, how can they even do that for $60? You know what I mean? Like, so they have people like sponsoring this stuff like on and ahead and beyond, like, to get all that stuff done. So
never mind the showmanship too, just like how it was put together. It was lit beautifully. Again, just the joke becoming the posters throughout the room that they're afraid were going to disappear at the end of the night. Then even the key, beyond just the everybody gets a keepsake, but stuff that was auctioned off that clearly somebody had to be paid to or use their own time to do it. No, this was a hell of a production for $60. Never mind, again, the venue had to be paid. You had to, again,
included dinner too. They couldn't do it for $60.
Appetizers. Like no, it was like, and then never mind, like you said, all the man hours just figuring the logistics out for this. Obviously the venue has to sit there. It has to be a venue that's, and then probably the most important aspect of all this, which I have to admit, it's one of those things where I noticed it throughout the presentations. But man, those tables with those tablecloths with the that were tucked in and had that nice taunt nature to them. Oh, that was beautiful. Like that, like a part, like I was like that is a subconscious thing that is like, I was just like, man, like it's those sort of touches. Now, I'm not even saying that to be like ironic. Like I noticed that, and a couple of times, again, like when you hear about the cheese lids and the proof of purchases, you kind of zone out for a couple seconds, and you kind of look around the room and you see that, and you're like, man, like someone probably spent 25 minutes doing that, and you gotta give again. That's a level, like you could very easily just put a tablecloth down and just walk away.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, you know, it was all clipped underneath, so it was tight, and it might be like, I don't know, it was
nice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a weird thing to like zone in on. I now that you mention it,
it was highlighted after the fact. Yeah, it was highlighted once everything was over.
I probably subconsciously noticed it, but you know, all that to say, like they're sort of like these people like want this stuff to sort of continue to be relevant, of course, right? So like I think like for example, I was talking about like at Celebration they have this collecting track stage that has like sponsors and volunteers like otherwise ReedPop and Lucasfilm like wouldn't even do it, because like the only resources like ReedPop and Lucasfilm put towards that covers like the background of the stage, like getting the room set up, and an audio technician. But like, you know, like for example, like I've filmed those panels in Chicago and the last time in Anaheim with my friend Mark, and like there's no, like they're never going to cover that, and there's a professional camera crew on every other stage in the venue, right? So it's and like just like door ushers and those panels have free giveaways at the end of every panel, stuff that costs thousands of dollars to produce, and like those numbers. And it's just like, it's interesting. Like there's probably a way to sort of like tap into like the amount of like goodwill and excitement and resources to like, I don't know. That's an interesting idea what you're saying about like repackaging some of these stories, because like I think some effort like that needs to be done to sort of help make this more relevant and interesting for other people.
Grow the cabal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, grow the outer circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make it a little less clandestine.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting idea.
But other than that, I'm trying to think what else was there. Chris didn't buy it. Chris, other than that posters, you didn't really get anything.
I bought some Tales of the Jedi comics. Okay. Like
yes, you
Sith
did.
War
Yes,
stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yul Keldroma.
Yeah, which I mean, so like I think I only, aside from those posters, only got comics. Like this, it was the same guy, and like, you know, I could tell like he was sort of, his comics were like Vampirella, Lady Death, and Tales of the Jedi. I'm like, I am this person. So like, you know, I got some of a little bit of all of that. So I don't know, like I find that like as into the vintage stuff as I am, like right, like now, like I'm really like focusing on like mid-90s like expanded universe type stuff, just because it's like I don't think Star Wars was ever cooler than that.
mid-90s Star Wars?
Yeah, like 90, like start
like
of
pre-special edition Star Wars.
Well, I mean, like
Heir to the Empire.
Like
Star
Heir
Wars?
to the Empire is 91, so but like that is still
so
pretty
like the
good.
rebirth of Star Wars.
Yeah, like that, like that, like 91 to like 98 is like
so in publishing ran the company.
Yeah, but like, you know, like the Dark Empire comics with like the Cam Kennedy art, like, you know, you have like the Judge Dredd like 2000 AD guy doing Star Wars, and it looks like that's the guy who's doing it, and it's just like bonkers looking, as to use one of your favorite words. And like, I don't know, like that type of stuff is like what's exciting me lately. Just so like I like even at Celebration and the Imperial Commissary convention I went to in Nashville, I mostly came away with 90s comics, Dark Horse stuff. Yeah.
I will say that probably consistently the comics is where like Star Wars just does whatever it wants. Like as somebody who's recently picked up the like 27, I think it's the 2016 or 2017 Vader comics, like where you have like Jocasta Nu with like a lightsaber gun. And I'm just like, I remember hearing about that, but and seeing it in action, and like it legit like starts to like there's a scene in that comic. And I'll take this away from like the 90s stuff that Chris was mentioning, but just again, give a personal example to like just how insane those comics are. She like shoots the lightsaber gun like 5 or 6 times, and I guess it overheats, because why wouldn't it overheat? And like there's a moment in the comic where, think of the moment from Lilo and Stitch where I guess Jumba has the gun and like he's shooting it, and Stitch stuffs it with a carrot, and they treat it like a hot potato. That happens almost scene for scene in this Vader comic, until eventually just like it blows the hole in the side of the Jedi Temple. And it's just like, huh. Like the whole time, can you imagine like, again, pitching that to like a, license executive at Disney, just being like, yeah, we want a lightsaber rifle, and we want Vader and the librarian from Attack of the Clones using it as a hot potato for 5 panels.
Dude, like I bet you that came out like 2 weeks after Lilo and Stitch or something, if you looked at the date. It's like somebody was actually trying to be subtle and show all their friends what they did after the comic actually got printed. But I don't like, there's crazy stuff. Like Dark Horse had one called the Empire, where like an Imperial base on like the home planet of like a man. Like, do you know what a man is? A man is a hideous alien in Jabba's palace. That's like, he's called that because it's like a broken anagram of Banana Man, and like he literally looks like a walking banana peel. And like you should Zach should probably Google a man while I'm talking about this, because he's got a staff with human skulls on it, and he drags around a human corpse as well. that looks like Uncle Owen did after he got burned alive. And like, it's just a man, but there's a Dark Horse comic where like an Imperial base on a man's home world is like horribly overrun and assaulted by a man, and it's like basically a horror movie of like,
oh, the guy from Return of the Jedi.
yeah, he's like a background guy in Jabba's
Yeah.
palace, but there's Dark Horse comic where like it's basically a horror story of like an army of those guys like overtaking an Imperial base, like Starship Troopers style.
Wow.
It's just like there's crazy stuff that you
Yeah,
never
he's
see.
the one
that
who we see him when Jabba pants says like Captain Solo's my favorite wall decoration.
Yeah, he's like Efontmon and Hermie Odal or whatever his name is. Just a preposterous design that you basically don't see in the movie. But somebody put a lot of effort in there. But like I don't know if you can see. There's like
there's pictures.
If you look up a
he's
production,
hideous.
and if you look up production still,
What?
like his staff does have human skulls on it.
Oh my god, is this real?
Yeah.
No, like what? They made new merchandise of this in the last 15.
Yeah, there's.
I'm showing Chris a picture right now.
Wow, I don't know. Is that a costume?
I
What
don't
is
know
that?
what that is. Is it inflatable?
Or is that a Kubrick or something? I don't know.
I
what
hope it's not inflatable because someone's gonna get some wrong ideas.
Well, there's definitely a Power of the Jedi a man figure from
Yeah.
like 2001 or something.
What the heck? This
Yeah.
is from the last like 15 years.
That's very odd.
That's very odd. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tales of the Jedi. Yeah, because I found the Kubrick. Yeah, it might be the Kubrick figure.
Yeah. That shouldn't exist either.
None of this should exist. This is very unsettling. Like, there's some actual pictures of the prop. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
There's moments of Star Wars. It's like there's moments of like Star Wars where I feel like it's like staring into the sun. Like it's there. We can't ignore it, but like we shouldn't look at it either. We should.
Yeah. But I mean, like it's kind of like just to highlight like we were talking. I was talking about those characters in the comics, but like there was a panel at Celebration, like not on the collection track stage, but it was just all about like just a deep dive into like the creatures that are in Jabba's palace. Like I feel like that's a lot more palatable to the average normie. Like it's not like it's deep into collecting, but like when you start looking into that sort of stuff, like
it's weird.
It's just rabbit holes upon rabbit holes, though, right? Eventually, the average audience member will have no idea what you're saying. Like one of the Blu-rays talks about like the Light Man, who's like,
Of course.
yeah, and it's like
The fool's gold of Jabba's palace creatures.
yeah, and like you must lose like immediately 30% and then dropping from there when you start talking about Light Man. So like I don't know, like I think there's a way to package that stuff more concisely that would get people make it a little more palatable for people. And I think I don't know, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a worthy project, and I might try and
Pitch them
do
on
something with that. Yeah.
Oh my god, Chris. Oh my god. So many ideas, so little
Yeah.
time. All right. Is there anything else to say about this? I guess the only thing I have to say is that on top, I think the only item I didn't mention I purchased a 1996 C-3PO and R2-D2 beach towel for $10. So I know I'm going to be taking a shower with later tonight
Yeah.
because I don't have a pool. Should be stated, like I'm not just using it because like I don't have another towel. I wasn't like, you know what, like my other towel just got ruined in the dryer last night. Like I need something like $10. Like it's convenient as hell.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a pretty wild, very colorful
It
towel
is.
that looks like it was probably never used for like 25 years.
I know,
so-
right? Exactly. It's like at that point, how can you not? Just the appreciation and value alone, you have to buy it at that point.
So I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know. I had a good time. Hopefully Zach had an interesting experience, if not a good time, and it was cool to sort of hang out for a couple days and do something that I was going to do anyway. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Chris was nice enough to invite me to be part of the, oh God, it's like that moment from the Phantom Menace. It's like, oh, where'd you park your ship? Like we parked like on the outskirts of Mos Espa. Like that's what I feel like. Like imagine the circle. Like you have like what? Boonta Eve pod race is like the inner circle, like Watto's box, like that's the innermost circle. Those are some of the high rollers there the other night. And then like you have Chris, and Chris is like the skull face alien guy, like running around Mos Espa. Then you have me, and I'm like Captain Panaka and Obi-Wan on the ship.
Well, I mean, it was just so weird. It's like we like we're wrapping up here, but like Zach mentioned, we visited a private collection earlier today. Like, you know, this is like a top, for sure, top 10, maybe top 5 collection in terms of the items in it, like in the country. And it's in Zach's backyard, along where with this meetup was.
It literally was 5 minutes from where I used to work. Like literally 5 minutes. Like almost shocking.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just like I can't imagine how I would think if you had come to Canada and been like, Chris, did you know what's happening in your backyard? Like, I don't know. That'd be the weirdest thing
Chris,
to
did
me.
you know there's a Tim Hortons in Canada?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Did you know the Star Wars collecting Illuminati is like attempting to meet up annually in your backyard, even though COVID kind of messed that up? Yeah, I don't know.
I still like the fact they made the joke numerous times. The second annual 3 years later. That was kind of, and the fact they kept like just like smacking everybody in the head with that. Like I appreciate that joke.
Yeah. So that was good stuff. I'm glad we got to record in person. I brought some gear for that purpose, and I'm glad it didn't go to waste. So yeah, it was fun, and hopefully we can maybe I don't know how long Zach's gonna still be in the area, but hopefully we can get in one more of these. Who knows, man?
No, that'll be the Southeast Star Wars. I will start the Florida branch of the Star Wars clandestine group, and it'll be exclusively Rise of Skywalker merchandise only.
Yeah, there you go.
It'll be a club of 4.5 people.
Yeah.
It'll be.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure there doesn't currently exist. Oh wow, I shouldn't say that because somebody might object. But I don't think there's a Florida like collectors club. I don't think that exists.
Oh man.
Yeah.
No, mine's gonna be exclusively Rise of Skywalker. Like,
Yeah,
that's my niche. That's going to be my niche. We're going to ride that train hard. It's only 12 pieces of merchandise. It'll be really easy to collect all of it. I can tour it around in the backpack on the weekends.
All right, sounds good. You built up that collection this weekend, so that's progress.
I will. Alrighty, folks. So concludes this episode of Knights of Vader, a Star Wars podcast. Thank you to An Inspiriority Complex for writing our theme song. If you want to hear more from us, you can always check us out at KOV Podcast on Instagram. We appreciate, again, Spotify review. That's the easiest way now, on top of the iTunes review, to sit there, boost us in the social media algorithm, social engine algorithm. On top of that, if you want to hear more of me, the Cinemoddities hiatus continues, even though I thought the drought was coming to an end. I know we're on the verge of Monstober, but again, check us out there. Some fun episodes, discussions. Chris, when you are not part of wandering around Mos Espa looking for backpacks and moisture evaporators, what are you up to?
You can go ahead and follow me at the Chris Porteous on Instagram, and Zach already mentioned it, but we're gonna try and I don't know. I think the goal is to like increase the content output vaguely with Knights of Vader. So like, do get ahead of the curve and follow the Knights of Vader Instagram. So yeah, at least know what's going on with that.
You too can see Chris and I outside a toy shop holding up memorabilia as I almost dropped one piece into the road. Okay, folks. Good night, but not goodbye. And as always, may the Force be with you.